Ladies and gentlemen, if you've just joined us, it's a pleasure to have your company. I am Chris Snell. My middle name is Nicholas, and that does count too if you abbreviate it all together, CNN. But like the network, I deal in truth and perception, not in fake news. And this news of freedom I bring you is APX, where we educate you to help you become a mindset of being an unstoppable mind, an unbreakable force, an untamed spirit, and ultimately, with that new mind of yours, you can become an army of one. If you're new to the program, just a short summary. It comes in two forms, where I have guests who talk to me about their professions, what makes them tick, and whatever notions, philosophies, and guidelines they share on this program, you and I can take and we can put into our own proverbial toolbox to help pave the way forward. There's also a solo show, but in this regard, I am proud to be able to bring you another interview. A premise to this, because this is going to be so apropos to the conversation as a whole. Preparing for this, and this is so synchronistic as we've just seen the appointment to Robert F. Kennedy becoming Secretary of Health. His late uncle, John Kennedy, said, if you want true peace, you need to be able to place yourself within the shoes of your opponent. And if you think about it, if you are studious like me, that is, the famed negotiator Herb Cohen said exactly the same thing. The most successful negotiation is when both parties get both sides what they want. So ultimately coining the term win-win. That was Herb's little tagline, which we pollute in our everyday daily conversation. Now, in between the word jumbling, I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is each side needs to win. It's not the one over the other. There comes a time, singular, where we all have to take hands together and help guide one another. The only caveat to that is, be careful. Keep your eyes and your ears open, because after all, you are what you read, you are who you involve yourself with, and ultimately you become what you think. So I'll say that again. You are what you read, you are what you listen to, you are who you involve yourself with, and you become ultimately what you think. This is the most powerful organ in the human body. Be careful. And as a result, helping to master this is truly one of the big challenges in our lifetime that we need to bridge. And therefore, I've brought someone special with me to help accomplish that. Corinne boasts both a Bachelor of Science and a Master's degree. She occupies herself as an occupational therapist. She works with children, and she's helping them ultimately develop their minds to bring out the best of themselves. But with that notion also comes a lifetime of lessons accrued from a lifetime of scars. Corinne joins me to tell me about her story, using her story in her work and ultimately combining both to form a lifeline. And hopefully as well, we'll get some life lessons out of her and ultimately realize that even though we are two continents apart, ultimately, again, we are part of the University of Life. So without further ado, Corinne, what a pleasure. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is the first podcast I've done ever. So I am both very excited and slightly nervous, and I'm going to be bold enough to say that.
Appreciate the vulnerability. It's truly a pleasure. I think we need to kick off with some anthropology. You come from the East Coast. How is it that you ultimately decided to practice psychology as a living?
Well, I'm going to have to correct you there. It's occupational therapy, which is heavily rooted in psychology, but it's also, there's a very physical component of it as well.
I see.
Yes. So the roots of OT are very psychologically based, and I definitely implement psychological tactics, if that's the proper word, with my students. But there is a very physical component. But to answer your question, how did I get involved? Honestly, my mom, she was an occupational therapist. She passed away from breast cancer in 2016. So she's no longer here. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate that. But when I was applying for colleges, I was very into science and I had done very well in science. And I was also very into arts and crafts and writing poetry. And my mom said to me, she said, occupational therapy is both an art and a science. And that was one of the things that sold me on it. In addition, she said, you'll get a job when you graduate. She said, you might not get a job immediately with other areas. And I said, okay, I like that. I like the idea of having some job security, but also nurturing both my artistic and scientific sides to myself.
Mm.
So I applied to the University of Scranton. I got a scholarship, which wasn't completely didn't completely pay for everything, but I think it ended up paying for like 75% of my education, which included my master's degree, and that kind of solidified it. The fact that the majority of my tuition was paid for. My mom was an OT. I saw how much she loved it and how well she did with it, and also how she helped other people. That
Mhm.
was an aspect that I liked as well, where it is very hands-on, and
Mm.
I
Mm.
liked that I would be able to use my talents scientifically and creatively to help other individuals.
Mm. It's interesting that you say that. It sounds like it's the perfect ballad, the perfect marriage between the creative side and the sciences side, because I went and did industrial psychology as well, but only for the pure reason so I could have a better understanding of interpersonal relationships. In any
Mm,
business, of course, you can agree with me on this because you are in the latter category of being a tangible service. But with perishable goods and tangible services, people often tend to forget that with business, it's purely just that sale, where it stretches as far and wider than that, the relationships that you have with your colleagues and with your clients. So it's always interesting to me to help understand a little bit where the opposite party is coming from. Again, reflecting on that win win argument I mentioned a couple of moments earlier. Um, did you specialize carrying on further in the tale specifically to want to work with children?
Initially, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I don't think so. I think it was more just like get my degree and then see what happens. And then towards the end of earning my master's degree, I ended up getting an internship in Denver, Colorado. And I ended up working at a hospital and I loved the hospital. And after that point, I decided to start working with adults. Though not immediately, I didn't end up in a hospital immediately. I first went into a nursing home, which I did not like. No offense to anyone
Mm.
who works
No,
there.
no, 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 no. I can absolutely agree with you there. My heart is absolutely broken when I see those advanced patients at the end stages of their life and ultimately in palliative care. You have my
Yes.
utmost sympathy.
Yes. And in addition to the palliative hospice component of it, which was difficult, it was just the facility I was at was not properly managed. We were
Ooh.
severely understaffed. I was working like doctor's hours. I was working 50 to 60 hours a week as a new grad, not knowing what I was doing, with no knowledge or experience in a nursing home. None. Other than like a few weeks observation at one facility where they were not kind to me, I should add. Um, so it was just overall a terrible experience. And my mom at the time was like, Corinne, like, I know you're tenacious, but like, get out of there. She's like, what are you doing? You're miserable. You have no life. You hate what you're doing. And they're taking advantage of you. And I was just like, I was so burnt out. I ended up leaving after 8 months, and then I ended up moving back to New York. But yeah, after that point, I was like, I never again.
Mm.
Uh, and then after that is when I ended up at Kings County Hospital, which I mentioned to you earlier, which is how I ended up living in Brooklyn. I moved into Crown Heights to be close to work, and I had a phenomenal experience there. They're the first trauma center in the whole country, I believe. They're one of the oldest hospitals in the country. There's buildings from the 1800s there. It's a very cool, aesthetically, you know, looking place to work, but also it was very well run. The staff I worked with were great, and I learned a lot. It was essentially three jobs in one. Um, so yeah, so at that point, how old was I? I was in like my late 20s then, And I worked there, I think, for 4.5 years. And I think towards the end of working there, that was the point that I was like, I'm ready for a change. I think I want to work with kids. So it wasn't until, what was that, 5.5 years or so into my career that I decided it was time for a change. But I've really loved all the work that I've done, adults, children. The people are what make the job, not the supervisor, not the facility, but having proper management does really help a lot, I will
Without a
say.
shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. When I was working in radio, people have often asked me, it must be difficult trying to be your own boss. And I said, if you only knew the hierarchy behind behind some of the most qualified and some of the greatest voices on the mic, there's always a producer who comes up with the ideas to make your job easier. My job at the time was just to talk spit. The other guys were literally mincing away behind a computer trying to come up with ideas for us to talk to, and we are indebted to them. But behind that great producer as well, there's a station manager who will always try and pee on your parade. But leadership, I guess, is what I'm
Yes,
trying to say. Ultimately,
agreed.
separates the men from the boys and makes the cookie crumble. But it sounds like you've had a very, very varied portfolio, and I can hear it in your speech. You've had a rich, rich career. And it must be thrilling now, especially in this phase of your life, working with children, and they might be a little insecure about themselves, and working with you, you help bring out their true personality. It must just make you warm inside, doesn't it?
It does. And I think this is a good place to mention that I myself have a visual impairment, which I have not discussed on my page yet. And it's something that I have been kind of like thinking about, should I come forward and discuss it? And I was like, you know what, maybe on the podcast I'll open up about that, because that might be a good opportunity. I think the fact that I have Stargardt's disease, which is a genetic condition that affects the retina, and there's no treatment for it. I think the fact that I've been living with this for my whole life, it makes me more empathetic towards the kids. I think it really gives me some understanding that even if I don't have the same quote unquote diagnosis as they do, I do know what it's like to feel like the underdog. I do know what it's like to want to be able to do what other kids are doing and not be able to do that. Like, I've never had a driver's license. Even when I lived in Denver, I biked everywhere and I was in great shape from that. But like, that has always been something, even to this day, where I feel different and apart from people. And it, like, on my great days, I'm like, oh, who cares? Whatever. But on my difficult days, I'm like, I feel essentially ashamed that I can't drive. And I can do pretty much everything else. As you and I discussed before the show, I was having difficulty reading the text about Skype, but I made it here, and but I'm here, right?
Where
Like,
there's a
you
will,
helped
there's a
me.
way.
Yes, where there is a will, there is a way, and hopefully God's will is involved in that too.
We
um,
trust. We trust.
yes, because I've done some willful things that I don't think God was a part of. But
Well, that
side
makes two of
note,
us. That makes two of
right?
us.
Exactly. So where there is your will and God's will, then there's alignment, and then the way to the right path, I guess. But you helped me. You guided me. You called me, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be calm now, and I'm like, I'm not calm. So let's go. Calm me down. Calm me, please.
Well, it's interesting that you should mention that. And I think this serves as the most perfect segue. Let me get this right. You and I are both on our way to 7 years?
Yes. In May 1st, it'll be 7 years.
May, October 25th.
Your October 23rd is your
Uh,
anniversary?
October 25. So 2 days later. October 25th, 2018.
No, I'm May 1st of
Okay, so
2018.
you're May, but you said October
Yes.
23rd. I was just correcting you. You
No,
said
I said May
23rd.
1st.
Oh, you said May 1st? Sorry.
Yes, I did. My birthday, it's okay. My birthday is in October. When we were texting last week, you said something
Yeah.
about me being a Libra. So my birthday is in October.
I
So
said
maybe you,
Libra, not zebra.
yes, yes. No, I'm not a zebra. Not a zebra. I might be, I've been called a sea otter and a cat and a dog. I've been
Well, I've
likened
been
to
called
those animals.
well, I've been called a lion too, and I think we both know why. So let's not go into that conversation.
Yeah, the rewind. Let's take a reset button here. So my sober anniversary is May 1st,
Mhm.
2018. And my belly button anniversary or birthday is October 15th, 1985. So I'm a Libra, belly button birth-wise, but
Right.
my sober birthday is in May. And it will be, God willing, 7 years come this May, 2025.
Tell me, how did your addiction start?
Oh gosh. Okay. How did it start? Um, Let me think. Where's a good place to start? I feel like college is a good place to start.
Oh
Um,
yeah, been there.
yeah. I mean, before college, like senior year of high school is when I started to drink more, but really up until that point, I was honestly terrified of getting out of control. I was at parties and I would see friends throwing up and I was like, what's really the point of this? That you drink this thing that doesn't, in my opinion, taste that good, and then you keep drinking until you throw up and then you don't remember what you did. Like it wasn't
Mm.
really that appealing to me. But then at some point, I think shortly before college, I went on spring break senior year of high school. Somehow I convinced my parents that that was a good idea. They let me go to Miami. And I think I was 17. And no, but I was very like, I've always been very academically driven. I've always been self motivated. Like, I have never really needed much external pressure. I've always put pressure on myself. So I was really honestly focused on academics. And then come spring break senior year, I think I got drunk for the first time and I was like, this is pretty fun. And so then that's kind of how the party girl started.
Right.
Uh, you know, a few months later, I went to college. I don't know. Did you ever use AOL Instant Messenger?
Yeah, we did. Not so much as you would like Facebook, but I am familiar with America Online. There was a computer
Mm,
game in the early 2000s called The Sims, where you would build
yes.
house, and that had to work through America Online. That's how I got to know
Oh,
about it. But
okay.
2012, as you mentioned, or as I mentioned rather, is when AOL and Flickr and MySpace was starting to get a little bit
Yes.
outdated. But AOL and Flickr, especially, were two of the most prominent IM messaging services of the day. I don't know if it
Ah.
still is.
Oh, okay. Yes, I used to play The Sims back in college. But back to the
Sure.
drinking stories. So I changed my AOL name to Party Girl. It was Party Girl X 151. 151, like the rum. Like people had to know Party Girl X, like Party Girl Extreme. Like I wasn't just the regular party girl, I was Party Girl X. Okay. 151, I needed to remind you again. I had to remind you 3 times that I was the party girl.
Oh boy.
So, so I, yeah, so like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, I think of maybe in grad school, I calmed down a little bit. I think at that point, it was like, how much more can I take? And sadly, that wasn't even the end.
Sure.
But yeah, I was really into partying. I kind of was like, I worked really hard in high school. As I mentioned earlier, I got almost a full scholarship to college. And this, I didn't really need to like study that much for certain classes. I just did really well. And that bothered a lot of people
Mm.
where they're like, Corinne, she's partying and sleeping and she's getting better grades than me. And I'm like, I don't know. Like it worked out. Like I ended up graduating with honors and I partied a lot. Somehow it worked out. Um so yeah, so I didn't really see many consequences. I think actually no, at one point it was freshman or sophomore year, I got in trouble for having a fake ID. And my
Oopsie.
dad's friend who's a lawyer had to come up and like I had to go to court and I don't even remember what happened because nothing bad happened. But at that point, really the major consequences were hangovers.
Mm.
Um, And then, after college, like I told you earlier, I moved to Denver for an internship. And at that point, I was really wanting to get away from drinking. And I thought being in Colorado, like, new beginning, I'm going to change everything. New city, no more drinking. I wanted to be a vegan. I'm going to do all this and that. And it's like now I realize it doesn't quite really just work that way. I
Mm.
thought if I went to the gym enough and I went hiking enough and I was outdoorsy enough, then I'm not going to want to drink anymore. And as we all know, that's at least for me, that's not how it worked.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I was still drinking, but not as much. I was, I was still party girl, but it went from like, at one point in college being 3, 4 nights a week to now maybe once every 2 weeks. Like it had really calmed down. And anyway, then I ended up moving back to New York. And at some point in all the moving back and forth from Colorado to New York, I had met somebody. Oh, this is difficult to talk about. I
Take your
had met
time.
someone in my travels and we were dating. And my parents did not like him. My mom, who also had a problem with alcohol, she ended up being sober for most of my life. But she, I think in her 30s, had, gotten into her addiction. But she said to me, she's like, Corinne, I'm an alcoholic, and so is this man. And I was like, whatever, and there were a lot of red flags, the drinking aside from him, in him, sorry, aside from that. And he and I, dated, and then he ended up moving from the West Coast to Brooklyn with me. And at some point, as a couple, we went from no, his stuff got. I need to separate it. Sorry, his stuff got worse first. At some
Right.
point, we went from we're drinking socially together like twice a week to then he started drinking every day.
My
And
goodness.
then at some point, I started following him. Um, and this is the part where I'm like, I don't know. I'm like getting my heart rate up thinking about it. At some point,
Take your
he
time.
became
Take your time.
physically abusive.
Mm.
And so when that started, it went from me drinking socially twice a week to me drinking every day. And I don't even remember much about the abuse. I just know I would go to work and people would make comments. I remember being at a party, my friend's wedding, and he hit me over the head with a beer bottle, and I was gushing blood everywhere.
Jeez.
Um, and I remember just telling my friend, like, "Oh, I fell, and I'm fine." Meanwhile, I was wasted, and he, uh, you know, I don't even know what he said or did, to be honest. I just know that there were points in time where we were out in public and things happened, and I kept making excuses for him, and then I just kept drinking more. And so that continued on for like a year and a half. And at some point, he stopped hurting me physically, but the drinking kept going on for both of us. And, it was getting to the point where, like, I just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore with him, and I can't do this anymore with myself. Just being with this man and harming myself in these ways, allowing him, even though he wasn't again physically hurting me anymore, just being with him was hurting my spirit and all of me.
Sure. Sure.
And I remember it was the end of 2024, and I said to multiple people, I was like, if things aren't better by Christmas, I'm done. And I don't even know what I meant by that, but that was one of like the most powerful things I had said at that time, because on Christmas Eve he ended up having a seizure due to alcohol withdrawal.
Mm. Mm.
And I was like, that was my wake up call where I was like, okay, done with him, done binge drinking. I'm just done. And so we broke up. I got sober for 90 days in 2020, in 2015, but I wasn't completely done, if I'm being honest.
Neither
I
was
think
I.
that was the lowest point for me, I would say, being in that relationship and the level of the drinking that I was doing. Um, but I wasn't completely done. So it took more time for me to really come to grips with like, this not drinking thing, I think, needs to be a forever decision. And so after that, it was like I would drink here and there, maybe once a month, maybe once every 3 months. There wasn't really any rhyme or reason. But when I started a job in, I think it was 2017, I had met some friends and they were like, oh, we're going to go out for drinks. And I went out with them and I was like, oh my God, I love drinking. And it was like, it's a few months later, I was like, this is going to be a problem.
Mm.
And so then in 2018, shortly after I had already made the decision to quit drinking, I started going to AA. So those are the ins and outs of like the bullet points. Does
Right,
that answer the
surely.
question?
Oh, absolutely, it does. Now, as we both know, we need a fellowship, and that's why we attend AA meetings. We learn more about spiritual bankruptcy. We learn how to avoid the stinking thinking. Also, just some bullet points. And please, if you are struggling with a problem, ladies and gentlemen, it's never too late. All we have to say is, my name is XYZ, and we have to confront the very truth that we know, and we just need to verbalize it, and we need to open these things. Listen, and we need to close this.
I also add something in here
Happily,
too?
happily.
In all seriousness, if a man or a woman, anybody is in a situation where they're not safe, please do not wait. Like, do not wait to get help. I know at various points in time, I didn't come forward with certain issues because I was afraid no one would believe me or they wouldn't take it seriously, or I felt the need to protect my partner or whoever. You don't.
You don't have
Like,
to. None
no, you
whatsoever.
don't. And the domestic violence hotline, they're a wonderful, I don't have their number readily available, but they have lots of wonderful resources. I think they have 24-hour phone service where you can call them if you're on the fence and you're like, is this bad? I don't know, and I'm scared, and you have all these things going through your mind. Like, please call them and talk to them, and they will help you, and they will help you to figure out what you want to do if you want to do anything.
Mm.
But just start somewhere and tell somebody, because it's not worth it. Your life is too important. I just want to say that.
And if you should decide to want to end it, just to make the pain stop, remember, it's not just you going. It's those who you leave behind. Don't do it. Please.
Yes, please don't call. I have called the suicide hotline before as well.
I tried
So,
it twice.
mm-hmm.
Don't do it. I know
Oh,
what I'm
wow.
talking about. And
Yeah.
Corinne knows what she's talking about. And you
Yeah.
see how out of the box we both are. We look
Mhm.
staid. We are very quirky. But believe me, there are pasts that we have just laid to rest. So we know the dark side. And we're both
Yes.
here to tell you, don't do it. Please. Your life
Yes.
is a lot worth more in measure. Don't.
Yes, it is. Yes. Okay. I'm glad that we said that, because that's like, I don't talk about this stuff frequently or much, or if at all yet so far on my page, because I'm really trying to put like the message from the mess out there in the
Mm.
world. But yeah, and even DM me if you need to. I don't know, like, talk to someone. Like, just talk to somebody.
And if I could shoehorn something in here, if you want to learn more about this dynamic beauty, I will repeat it at the end of the episode. Go on Instagram, key in at True Core Recovery. You'll see wonderful motivationals. You'll see lovely jewelry of this wonderful beauty. And between you and I, no one else has a nicer smile than what she has. And you'll
And,
get
and don't forget, sobriety is hot.
absolutely. How apropos. How apropos after Valentine's Day. Post for me again like that with a cup. Post for me
What
again. Give
the
me a
heck?
nice smile. Give me a nice smile along with that cup.
I'm
Ah!
not very good at winking. I try to take pictures of myself winking. I'm like, I look like like it's really.
You're being too critical. You're beautiful. You're beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I was not paid to make that mug. I did that for my own sheer enjoyment. Just want to say this is not a promotion for anything. other than loving yourself with the
True.
mug.
I want to ask, with it now approaching 7 years, you're still committed to your sobriety. How has your spirit healed since exiting that relationship?
Oh, so honestly, it's still healing, if I'm being
Right?
honest. There are still layers there um that time alone I don't think has healed. I've had to do a lot. I don't want to say had to. I've done a lot of work in therapy and with some coaching, and I highly recommend that for anyone in recovery. And even if you're not in recovery, um, I think therapists and coaches are there to help guide you to the next layer of healing. And again, I would never tell anyone to stick with a coach or therapist that they did not feel comfortable with, because I've had those experiences where I essentially was victim blamed by a therapist. And at the time, I didn't know that's what was happening. But anyway, that's a whole other
Sure.
tangent. But find a coach or therapist or both. You can do both if you want. That gets you and sees you and validates you. That's what I think has helped me a lot, is working with people, sponsors, fellows, coaches, therapists. If you're religious, I'm not particularly religious at this point, but I know some people are, and they find people in the religious community who can validate them and build them up. But really just lean on other people. That I think is what's given me a lot of strength, which sounds
Mm,
ironic that I feel more autonomous by leaning on other people, but I do.
Have that community. Remember, no man is an island.
No, as much as I've tried to be one.
You and me both, darling. You and me both. Looking at yourself now, do you think as well that your sobriety and the life lessons from the experience that you've obtained informs your work at what you do as a occupational therapist?
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't know about so much with kids. Well, hold on, let me restart. I do in that I think it helps to keep my heart gentle and pure. Again, that combined with my disability, which was also a big reason why I drank in college, I think. I
Mm,
don't think I knew that at the time, but I think it took me a decade from when I was, I think, 12 to 21 or 22 to get a diagnosis. And that was really scary. And I think that was a big reason why I drank. So between my disability and my experiences, as you said, I think that really keeps me coming at a place of humility, approaching pretty much everybody, and not just my students or clients or patients, whatever word you want to use. I think it really helps to keep my heart soft. And some days I'm like, I love that I'm so light and bright. And other days I'm like, rawr. I'm gonna roar and you're gonna listen. And then I go, Was I too loud? True story. True story. But
I
I
agree
think
with
these,
you.
yeah. But I think the experiences I've had have definitely helped to keep my heart pure and in the right place and just right sized for
Mm.
sure.
I have to admit something to you, and you've used a word that's now become my favorite word. You actually liked something that I put up this week of me in the gym, and the last sentence is, I'm addicted to humility.
Mm.
I'm going to say it like it is. I was the most arrogant ass in active addiction. The most arrogant, like you would not believe. You know this as well as I. The moment that alcohol is floating free in your bloodstream and in your liver, you think you are untouchable. And the lips become loose, your mind goes haywire, your heart becomes crooked and corrupt. And through that arrogance, I hurt so many people, many even in my own family. And now, looking past and beyond that, in working towards 7 years, the lightest I feel, and that's the best way that I can describe it as an experience, as a feeling in particular, is there's no lighter feeling than humility. knowing that there will always be someone that I can learn from, someone
Hmm.
who I can build a relationship with, working and or otherwise, help to make a difference in someone's life with, etc., etc., everything on a positive note. But it has to start with me getting my head out of my own ass
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah, for sure. And if I could add to that, if I can
Happily.
add to that, sometimes having your head on your ass means you think less of yourself. And I think
Couldn't have
that
said
for
it
me
better.
was I think for me, that's been the bigger problem where it's like, talking about the relationship that I was in and the abuse, I didn't think I deserved more than that. So the humility isn't just I'm so arrogant, but it's also I'm not less than. Like I'm in the middle. Like I'm just as important as everybody else. I matter just as much as everybody else. So I think those are the two dual aspects I think of, you know, outside of humility is
Mm,
better than or
mm,
less than. And then humility says, well, I'm neither of those things. I'm great and I deserve love and I deserve peace and I deserve sobriety, but I have one day just like everybody else.
true.
7 years, 6 years. Sure, that on paper that sounds great, but technically we all have the same amount of time.
Mm,
And that's what humility is, where it's like, okay, I
truly.
was sober yesterday. Can I stay sober today?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the button on the nose. And I can't summarize it other than that. Again, adding to what you have said, every morning when I wake up, when that alarm goes off, what can I do to keep a level head today? What am I going to do today to remain sober? How am I going to make not just my day, but someone else's day a lot more worthwhile? Because here's the thing, we as former addicts and alcoholics are chameleon like. We are
Hmm.
chameleon like. We can hide behind a nice white smile, but it's the hurt that people don't see on the inside.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And I think with social media, I think it's incredible what everybody's doing, but like I'm not showing my tears on there. And I think it's amazing the people who feel brave enough to do that. But I'm like, last night was Valentine's Day and I spent it alone and I'm fine with that. But I
As
broke
did
down
I.
at one point. What?
As did I.
Right. But I called my sister and I could feel it in me all day at work. I'm like, I'm gonna need to cry. Like I feel it and I'm going to do it. I don't know when. And so I called her and it was all these things building up and it's fine. It happens. But I'm like, I had like a good half an hour to an hour where I was in my room crying and it's okay. Like we need to do that. Like I actually in sobriety probably cry 1 to 2 times a week regularly.
It's
It's
part of the
just
healing process.
exactly, exactly. And sometimes I do it in therapy and sometimes I don't. And there's days in therapy where I say to my therapist, I'm like, I really want to cry, but I can't. Ah. And, then, and we both kind of laugh about it. And then sometimes the tears come and then sometimes it's the next day. But I think sobriety has helped with getting in touch with the emotional awareness and also recognizing in myself when again the tears are starting to build up, being like, all right, it's coming and
Mm,
it's okay. It's coming and
absolutely.
it's okay. Yeah.
I had an experience as well quite recently where I was chatting with a good friend of mine. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Life gets busy. And I'm a positive, optimistic person. That is what I want to be in recovery. And maybe this is just a part of my token masculinity, but just at one point the tears were lying shallow. And you know that just that one trigger sentence, and when that trigger sentence is uttered, then the wells open up, and then you can't anymore.
Hmm.
And that also is okay because I read a quote not long ago, which is crying is not a sign of weakness, and it's unisex in in premise. It says crying is not a weakness. In fact, tears are a sign that you've been strong for too long.
Ooh, I have not heard that. I like that.
Well, you're
I
welcome
love
to it.
that.
You're
Yes,
welcome
and
to it.
I agree because this whole past week I could feel like the tension building in my body, and I could just it's like I'm observing myself and noticing that I need to release, and I like that. Yeah, I would say that that makes sense.
What else do you do to keep yourself in a positive frame of mind, extracurricular wise? Do you still run? Do you still, excuse me, not run, cycle? Do you still do rock climbing just to keep yourself in that positive frame of mind?
Sometimes. So I did actually run at one point. I don't anymore. In sobriety, I walk. Seriously, I did. I got a Fitbit a few months into sobriety. My dad gave it to me, and at first I was like, I don't really know about this thing, and then it became a really big motivating tool for me. Where, again, I don't drive, so I need to walk places or take the bus.
Mm,
And I decided early in sobriety that I'm going to walk to all my AA meetings, and I would pick meetings sometimes that were far away just to get my steps in. Like,
right.
okay, I'm in Crown Heights. I'm going to go to Williamsburg, and I'm going to walk there or bike there. Um, Biking, I haven't done as much. I really don't even remember the last time I did it, to be honest. I have two bicycles that are in my hallway. Maybe in the warmer weather, I will. Like, I used to be a savage beast in Colorado and bike in like -10-degree weather, 20 miles a day. I'm not doing that anymore. You know, like, props to me and my badass 24-year-old self. Like, that was very cool, but I'm not at that level anymore. But I do probably walk like 12 miles a day now,
Well, that is
especially during
certainly
the week.
something.
Today I'll probably walk 3. I'm gonna I'm, I'm gonna take a break today, but during the week, I will take the bus to work, and then I'm on my feet a lot, so I get in probably several miles there, running after the kids up and down I'm up and down on the stairs, schlepping
Okay.
heavy things. And then I walk home 5 miles. I think I told you that before the
Right, right, right.
podcast. I walk 5 miles home, and then by the time I go to bed, yeah, I'm close to 12 miles during the week. Um, so that's my main form of exercise on a daily basis.
Mm,
Rock climbing, I will do. It's one of those things that it's kind of like you do it in cycles, I guess. And I think this is
right.
typical with a lot of climbers where you might not climb for a year, but then you want to go like 5 days a week. It's
Mm,
like
mm,
because you get projects and you want to finish them. Um, with the way my schedule's set up now, I don't really have as much time to go during the week, but probably in the spring I might start to go once a week on the weekend. But I'm not currently doing it now. And then sometimes I'll do like stretching on a yoga mat, nothing glamorous. I'm not by no means a yogi. I don't do the poses properly, I don't think.
but at
So,
least you can get that elasticity in your body.
yes. And that's really very basic and simple when I'm like, oh, my hamstrings feel tight. Okay, let's get up the yoga mat. Let's do a few stretches. Um, and again, kudos to anybody who does any of that stuff regularly. I give them a lot of credit. But my main thing is walking, and then sometimes in the summer hiking. I love to hike when I can. Not driving kind of does affect that, but I try to not think about it too much and just look for opportunities to make it happen. Um, and biking, yeah, I don't know. I had an accident in 2016.
I see.
Shortly before my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, I was hit by a car in Brownsville. At that point, speaking of Savage Beast, I was biking from Long Island to Brooklyn, 18 miles in one direction,
Good
working at the
grief.
hospital, and then biking back. Yeah.
Woo-wee.
And I was hit by a car like a mile away from my job. And they're like, which hospital do you want to go to? I was like, well, take me to Kings County. I was going there anyway. You know, I still see my friends. Like, let's go.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
No, no, it's good. It's okay. I'm okay. I'm glad you laughed. It's good to laugh. Yeah.
Uh,
No, but that
my
was
dark
supposed to be
humor.
funny.
My dark and
Yes.
irreverent humor. Ah,
No, it was supposed to. It was a funny moment. So, in that accident, I lost full range of motion in my left arm. I broke my humerus. I broke a bunch of ribs. I severely damaged my pelvis. I didn't have to have
whoopsie.
surgery, thank God. But I still don't have full range of motion in my left arm, which has slightly affected my rock climbing.
Right.
But I'm not gonna let that stop me. I'm like, if I'm not gonna let being legally blind stop me from rock climbing, I'm not letting it the shoulder not working 100% stopped me either.
Well, you know what? I praise you for making that statement. I was very open about having cancer also before we started the show, and I thought I was. I didn't think I was going to be able to function properly as well, because what a lot of people won't tell you about cancer, when you are just in remission, there's always that risk of it coming back.
Yes.
And more times than 10, those cells go into your nervous system, and then that's where it can do the real damage before it even hits the affected organ. It's that nerve damage that it can do can do a lot of carnage with. So I hear you with regards to having had that injury and losing that range of motion, But I also said I'm not going to let this affect me. And when I went for the final checkup, I was just hoping for remission. I said if I can just get a couple of more years and just do a couple of things off of my bucket list, I'll be up there. Then take me where you want, Lord. But when I got the full all clear, wow. And also
great.
Also like yourself, I'm not going to let having a disease at a young age affect my way looking forward. In fact, you can agree with me on this. It's going to be the milestone, the yardstick. I like to say all the time. It's going to be the yardstick paving the way forward of where you're going to prove the opposite, which is why I said to you, don't call yourself you're physically disabled. Call yourself physically disengageable or physically engageable. Right.
Yes. And that's something that I remember you told me that recently. And I'm like, I don't know. I think when having a podcast or speaking to other people, it's just easier. I hate to say that, but it's the truth, because that's what's the commonly agreed upon term. But I do love the idea of having a societal shift in the vocabulary or even on a personal level, for sure. But as far as explaining to other people, my experience, it is easier to just say disability. But I don't love the term, and I don't also love legally blind either, because I think it's very misleading. Where like I can see, yeah, it's like clearly I can see, but it really means that with a certain level of vision, I think it's 20/200 or worse, which is what I'm at. Then you're considered legally blind. And I think it also talks about the definition, goes into correction, and like there's no correction for my vision. So I think that's part of the definition also of legal blindness, if I'm not mistaken. But I hate those terms. I really do, if I'm being honest.
No, I do too. I've been very open about the fact that I'm pissed that autism is considered a disorder now, according to whichever medical body, be it DSM or insert whatever criteria else is applicable. It's not a disorder. It's a condition. It's a condition which you can manage.
Mm-hmm. I like that condition. Yes. Condition
so I'm with
sits
you on
right
that.
with me too, or better. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know who comes up with these terms either, but I also don't like, if I can add, if I can say here, I don't really like the term alcoholic either. If I'm being honest. I don't. I saw somewhere on Instagram, someone said something about alcoholic is an adjective, not a noun. And I was like, 100%. I happen to agree with that statement.
Sure.
I don't know what the term should be. And I unfortunately don't have a solution, which I don't at the moment, but I don't really like saying I'm an alcoholic. I don't. I don't know. What are your takes on that?
Well, I'll be very fair and honest. I have no problem calling myself an alcoholic and an addict. Really, I don't. I had a little kerfuffle with someone out of Canada about this 2 years ago, where he said, if you don't use anymore, you don't have the right to call yourself an alcoholic or an addict any longer. Which is fair in principle, which is fair in premise, but not so much in principle. Why? because you're always that one decision away to relapse.
Yes.
Okay? So
Hmm.
I'll meet that halfway. But if you are going to say that you were just simply you're not an addict any longer today, you're robbing yourself blind. You're bullshitting yourself.
Yes.
That's my experience. But please, if people have a different thought process than you're more than welcome to it. But ultimately, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So I've got no problem talking about people and referring to myself, or talking to people and subsequently referring to myself as an addict and alcoholic, because I want to help the conversation forward. And if people are struggling, and I've had how many people come to me and say, you are so brave and brazen in talking about what had happened to you. I have to play open cards with you. I suffer from the same problem. And then I will help them talk to someone who can ultimately help them with their freedom. That's ultimately what I want. I don't want to talk about the politics with regarding to you shouldn't say
Yes.
this or you shouldn't say that.
I agree.
The politically correct way. I just want to help move the conversation forward. But I will never judge people on how they want to label themselves. It's their issue. But don't come to me and point the finger at me and say, I'm the problem, when you're the one who should be looking in the mirror. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yes, I 100% agree with everything you just said. And again, that's more or less part of what I was getting at, is that if other people want to use the term alcoholic, non-alcoholic, sober, this, that, whatever, banana, orange, cucumber, I don't care. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't really matter.
Kangaroo.
Yeah. I don't like when you go to AA, I have to say I'm an alcoholic. That's what I'm getting at. Where it's like,
oh, right.
why, in order to participate in this club of healing and community, why can't I just say, I'm Corinne, I'm sober, I'm choosing not to drink today? I feel like there's so much more power and levity
There's what you can say, and I've heard a lot of people use that.
Right. No, but I'm talking about in AA specifically, because I have on my page that I go to AA, but I have some beef with it too. So
why not chicken?
or chicken. You get what I'm saying, though. So I just don't really like that I have to say I'm an alcoholic. That's where I'm saying I disagree, where it's being imposed upon me, this label of I'm confined to this term. And so I agree with what you're saying. People, you pick your pronouns, you pick your adjectives, nouns, all these words, but let's focus on the healing rather than the label and the politics. Exactly.
You said something, and I think that's the reason why you and I have had a closeness, if I could be so honest, is the fact that you and I don't like to be pigeonholed. We don't subscribe to a label.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about with disability and how that feels like another pigeonhole to me. And then with the pigeonholing, I think comes a lot of stigma and a lot of misunderstanding and just a lot of things that aren't essentially helpful to showcasing the empowerment and the things that can be done versus the limitations and restrictions. So to me, alcoholic, disabled, legally blind, those are such restricting terms. And now I'm confined to this box of self-limitation. Whereas if I'm sober and I'm differently abled or differently engaged, what was the term that you used?
Physically engageable.
Physically engageable. Right. Something with more emphasis on what can be done, that there's so much more freedom in that. And there's so much more empowerment and so much more positive outlook. And this isn't to dismiss that people have SHIT, that they need to
SH1T.
that people have stuff. I try not to curse, because whatever the word is, that people have stuff that they need to work on. It's not dismissing that. It's just giving people a lens and a mindset to view themselves from, that is coming from a place of love and empowerment and building up rather than squishing in. That's how I see it anyway.
Kudos to you. Kudos to you. And I'm sure that as we wind down, you have a different view of yourself in contrast to the person who you once were. You must be literally very, very proud of the woman that you have become today, and you are still becoming now.
Thank you. Yeah, pride.
No, I wouldn't
Sometimes,
say
yes.
pride. More a question of appreciation.
No, pride is, there's nothing wrong with the word pride. And I like that you used that term. I just have my own feelings about it. I love when other people say they're proud of me, but it's like difficult for me to say I'm proud of myself. But I think that's where some of the work lies, because pride isn't inherently good or bad. It just is. It's a feeling of, like you said, appreciation or acknowledgement of accomplishment. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's when it goes to, like you said, such levels of arrogance
Mm.
or I'm better than, that's when it becomes a problem. But that's again where you enter humility. When you couple humility with pride, that's actually quite a beautiful pairing, in my opinion. So sure, I am proud. I am proud. I should claim that. I should. I am proud, and I think I try to not think about it too much, because I try to think about what do I need to do today, if that makes sense, rather than my feelings about my pride and my accomplishment. But I am proud of myself. Yes, thank you.
It's only a pleasure. And Corinne, I have to congratulate you for a woman who was supposedly very nervous at the start of this program. You were absolutely, unbelievably insightful and unbelievably transparent. You couldn't be more proud of the healing that you have made about yourself. Again, congratulations. And I'm excited with you and for you for what the future may hold.
Thank you. I love how you phrased that, with you and for you. 2 thumbs up.
Folks, and that brings our show to an end. You're more than welcome to check her out on Instagram. Her name is Corinne, Charlie, Oscar, Romeo, India, November, Echo. Her Instagram handle is at True Core Recovery. Shoot her a DM. She'll help you along the way. If you just want to show a token of appreciation and a favor from me to you, just compliment her on that nice smile and those beautiful eyes, because after all, she is more than physically engageable. Likewise, you can follow me as well on Instagram. My handle at Chris Nell Media on Instagram. You can shoot me an email. I'll leave all the subsequent details in the show notes of the episode. That's Corinne. I'm Chris Nell, and we both remind you that through the Apex Predator, you yourself can help mold your mind into becoming an unbreakable mind, an unstoppable force, an untamed spirit, and ultimately become your very own army of one, an Apex Predator. Guys, look after yourself. We'll see you in the foreseeable future. Ta-ta!